I took the job on the fishing boat in Florida because the sea was the only place that still held my father's footsteps. He had disappeared 10 years earlier, swallowed by a night storm that left nothing but an empty chair and an old cap on the porch.
People in the town said he was gone.
People in my bones kept saying the sea remembered him and kept him whole if you obeyed certain rules. The boat was stubborn. Its name was Marigold, and the paint peeled like old skin. The harbor tasted of diesel and iron. The crew did not ask many questions. They welcomed me with nods and the kind of silence that means you must learn fast. On the galley wall, under a cracked clock, someone had written rules with a thick marker. Rule 1. Never whistle while lines are in the water. Rule 2. No flames below deck. Rule 3. If a bell rings 3 times, go to the bow and do not speak to the water. Rule 4. Do not write in the log the names of those not aboard. Rule 5. On the first Friday, leave a bottle of rum on the stern. They told me the rules were old and practical. The captain, Matteo, said them like a man reading from a family book. His voice was small and steady. The sea keeps what we give it, he said. The rules give us the shape to keep what matters where it belongs. At first, the rules felt like superstition. I rose with the men and learned knots until my fingers ached. We hauled nets under gray mornings and pulled the day's cold light across the deck. We ate salt on our tongues and slept in short bursts. I learned to keep my lips quiet. A song in the wind could become a promise to the deep, they said, and promises must be paid. Night on the Marigold had a hush you could cut with a knife. The boat rocked, and the water slapped the hull in a slow, patient rhythm. Once, I saw a bell far off, like a memory of metal. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Matteo's face went still as a photograph. The crew went to their places without a sound. I followed and stood at the bow with my hand in my pockets. The water looked like black glass. My breath made a small cloud, and then nothing. We did not speak to the water. We beat on wood. We made noise, so the sea would not find room to answer with names. Afterward, when we pulled the nets, they were heavy with odd things: a scrap of ribbon, a child's tiny shoe, a photograph of 2 men laughing on a deck. One of the men looked like my father. My chest hollowed out when I saw it. The men looked at my face, and then away. They had learned how to carry grief with the same steady hands they used to coil rope. It began to feel less like superstition and more like a ledger. The ocean kept accounts. It returned what it took when you called things correctly, and it kept what you dragged home when you called them by the wrong shape. The rules were a language for not naming things that should not be named. Once I found a small notebook beneath a loose board. The entries were jagged and full of crossings out. My father's name appeared with notes. Left at dusk, whistled, no rum. The last line in a shaky script read, "Do not call them with music." After the book, my hands stopped reaching for tunes. A song would sit like a pebble in my throat, and I let it stay there. The crew watched me with polite hardness. They did not say my father's name. They did not have to. The sea remembered for them both. A boy came one night, lost in a small skiff. He had a lantern and a wild look. He kept muttering a name, Luca, over and over, weary with repeating a prayer. Matteo wrapped him in blankets and set him below. The bell pealed again. Once, twice, 3 times. The water answered with a face that was not fully flesh, not fully memory. Seaweed clung to its hair, and something like a smile hovered on glass lips. The crew banged on the rails and shouted nonsense, a battering of sound to block the sea's speech. They would not say names. They would not listen. I stood with Matteo and felt the thing at the surface look at me with eyes that had known my father's laughter. It opened its mouth like a book, and the sound curled toward us like cold smoke. I had thought the rules kept the sea at bay. I learned that they kept us from giving the sea what it wanted most: a name. Names are contracts, the crew said. When you speak a name to the deep, you invite the memory back in a shape that can take you. The boy reached for the water. His fingers trembled like leaves. I moved without thinking and pulled him away. A cold tendril brushed my palm, as if to take my heat. The touch was like grief given shape, familiar and wrong. I held him close, and the thing folded away. The sea shuddered, and then went quiet. After that, the nets brought up more things. A ring with a scar of salt, a child's drawing clinging to a shard, a small bottle with a message that said, "Keep the rules. They weigh more than sorrow." The objects read like a ledger being balanced. Sometimes the marrow of my chest ached with a hole that felt like my father's absence. Sometimes I would wake and think I could hear his laugh braided into the bells ringing. I learned to keep names folded close. The sea listens and the rules keep me alive, still for now. Months passed. The crew changed in small ways. Faces grew paler. The young woman who mended nets started leaving a cup of coffee at the stern every dawn. A man who swore he would not write names opened the log and scratched a line for someone who had been aboard a week before and never came back. The sea answered with a night that broke the air like glass. We banged rails and shouted to cover names we had spoken. Matteo told me once, "The rules are a habit like prayer. They don't stop the sea. They keep us from breaking ourselves in the attempt." He sounded tired. There was a tremor in his hands that made him seem older than his years. In the end, I never found my father's body. The sea gave me his photograph, and then it took the photograph when I stopped looking. I kept the rules because I had learned their cost. They were not about magic prevention. They were about small promises we made to keep our world from becoming a ledger the ocean could read and collect from. Sometimes on quiet nights, I stand at the stern and leave rum in a small glass on the rail. I watch it shiver into the dark and feel like I'm setting down a debt. I do not whistle. I do not light a candle below. I keep names folded into my chest like small stones. If you ever find yourself with water pressing at the hull and a bell that rings 3 times, think of the rules. They are not only about fear. They are about respect for the things that remember us. Speak a name, and the sea will return it shaped by what it keeps. Keep silence, and sometimes what is lost can stay where it belongs. I work on a fishing boat in Florida. The rules keep me alive. They keep my memory honest. They also keep the sea from speaking my father's name aloud. For now, that is enough.